somewhere among the rolling green hills of Tuscany, hidden behind ancient vineyards and walled hilltop towns that have stood for over 2,500 years, lie the silent foundations of cities built by a people history tried to forget. They spoke a language that still resists full translation. They worshipped gods that no other civilization shared. And according to Roman historians writing 18 centuries ago, they simply vanished, absorbed, erased, gone forever. For most of recorded history, that was the official story. A mysterious civilization appears, dazzles the Western Mediterranean with unparalleled sophistication, influences the birth of Rome itself, and then disappears without a trace. A perfect enigma with no satisfying ending. But then, modern geneticists began extracting ancient DNA from the bones these people left behind. And when the results finally came back, almost every page of the textbook story fell apart. The Etruscans were never who we were told they were. And far more unsettling, they never actually left Italy. To truly appreciate what the DNA overturned, we first have to step back into a lost world that, for nearly 700 years, shaped almost everything the Roman Empire would later become. The Etruscan heartland lay in central Italy, in the region we still call Tuscany today. It stretched north into the Po Valley and south toward the Bay of Naples. At its peak, between the 8th and 5th centuries BC, Etruscan influence covered an area that today supports roughly a quarter of Italy's entire modern population. 12 great cities formed the beating heart of their civilization. Places whose names still echo through time: Florence, Bologna, Perugia, Siena, Vi. These are not ruins. These cities have never been emptied. People have lived on these same streets, in these same hills, since the Etruscans laid the very first stones. By every measurable standard, this was the most advanced culture in the entire Western Mediterranean before Rome rose to dominance. They were master metalworkers and jewelers whose technical skill still leaves modern artisans speechless. Consider a single Etruscan pendant depicting the river god Achilles. Artisans crafted its beard using thousands of microscopic grains of gold, each less than half a millimeter across. The precision is almost impossible to replicate even with today's technology. They developed a signature ceramic style called bucero, clay mixed with soot, fired, and then polished until the surface gleamed like polished black bronze. Elegant, mysterious, almost metallic in its dark beauty. At sea, they were unmatched. Etruscan ships dominated the western coast of Italy for nearly 3 centuries. Their piracy was so feared that by the 7th century BC, Greek and Phoenician merchants refused to sail north of Sicily without armed escorts. The Etruscans even invented the naval ram, a heavy bronze beak mounted on the prow of their warships. Their fast 50-oared pentacounters became the terror of the Mediterranean. But perhaps their greatest legacy is one that Rome has never fully acknowledged. The last 3 kings of Rome were Etruscan: Tarquinius Priscus, Servius Tullius, and Tarquinius Superbus. For over a century, Rome itself functioned essentially as an Etruscan client city. Its early government, religious practices, military organization, much of it was imported directly from the sophisticated cities to the north. The toga, an Etruscan garment, the purple-bordered robes worn by Roman magistrates, borrowed from Etruscan ceremonial dress. The fasces, those bundles of rods carried as symbols of authority, purely Etruscan in origin. Even the alphabet you're reading right now carries faint Etruscan fingerprints. The Latin script was a modified version of the Etruscan alphabet, which itself came from Greek. Through Latin, Etruscan linguistic traces flowed into the Romance languages and eventually into English. Everyday words like person, ceremony, and lantern are distant echoes of a civilization supposedly extinct for 2 millennia. There was something else that truly shocked their neighbors. In a Mediterranean world where women were largely confined to the home and excluded from public life, Etruscan women dined with men, drank wine with them, and attended public games and festivals as equals. Greek historians, scandalized, accused the entire society of decadence and moral decay. It wasn't decadence. It was simply a different, more egalitarian model of society, one that thrived alongside their technological and artistic achievements. By the late 7th century BC, Etruscan kings ruled Rome. By the 5th century, Their civilization had reached its zenith. 12 powerful cities, cultural influence stretching across 90,000 square miles, and a maritime reach from Corsica to the Bay of Naples. And then, according to the old textbooks, they vanished. Absorbed by Rome, erased from history, but that narrative was built long before anyone could read the language written in human bones. For over 2,000 years, the question of Etruscan origins was one of the great unsolved mysteries of the ancient world. Greeks and Romans argued endlessly about it, and every theory carried the political biases of its tellers. The most famous account came from the Greek historian Herodotus in the 5th century BC. He described a great famine in the kingdom of Lydia in western Anatolia, modern-day Turkey. The king supposedly divided his starving people in two. Half stayed behind, the other half boarded ships and sailed west, eventually landing on the shores of Italy and becoming the people the Greeks called Tyrrhenians, the Etruscans. In this version, the Etruscans were refugees and migrants from the eastern Mediterranean who crossed the sea and built a new civilization from scratch. For centuries, this migration story dominated. On the surface, it seemed plausible. Cultural similarities, artists, influences, even some linguistic hints appeared to point eastward. But then came the genomic revolution. In 2021, a landmark study published in the journal Science Advances analyzed ancient DNA from Etruscan remains spanning several centuries. The results were nothing short of revolutionary. The genetics showed that the Etruscans were not recent arrivals from Anatolia or the eastern Mediterranean. Instead, they exhibited strong genetic continuity with the local populations of central Italy going back to the Iron Age and even earlier. Their ancestry was overwhelmingly local, a mixture of earlier Italian hunter-gatherers, Neolithic farmers, and steppe-related components that had already been present in the peninsula for centuries. There was no significant influx of Eastern Mediterranean DNA at the time when Etruscan culture emerged. In other words, the Etruscans were not mysterious outsiders who sailed in from Lydia. They were, to a remarkable degree, indigenous to Italy. Their unique language, art, and social customs developed locally, perhaps influenced by trade and ideas from the broader Mediterranean, but their biological roots were deeply planted in the Italian soil. This finding dismantled the old Herodotus migration myth and forced historians to reconsider how cultural innovation actually happens. Great civilizations don't always require mass migration. Sometimes, profound cultural transformation can arise from within. But the second revelation from the DNA was even more profound, and in many ways more moving. The study didn't stop at origins. Researchers compared Etruscan genomes with those of later Roman-era individuals and, crucially, with modern populations across Italy. What they discovered challenges everything we thought we knew about Roman conquest and cultural erasure. The Etruscans did not disappear after Rome conquered their cities. Their genetic legacy persisted. Modern people living in central Italy, particularly in Tuscany and surrounding regions, still carry detectable levels of Etruscan-related ancestry. The absorption was not destruction. It was integration. Rome didn't wipe the Etruscans off the map. It folded them into the growing Roman identity. Their genes, their innovations, their cultural DNA flowed into the Roman world and survived long after the last independent Etruscan city fell. When you walk the streets of modern Florence or Siena, when you admire the Renaissance masterpieces that emerged from these same hills, you are, in a very real genetic sense, walking among the descendants of the Etruscans. Their language may be mostly lost. Their gods may be forgotten. But in the blood of millions of Italians today, and in the very foundations of Western civilization, the toga, the alphabet, the symbols of power, the Etruscans never truly left. This discovery does more than rewrite one chapter of ancient history. It reminds us that the stories we tell about vanished peoples are often written by the victors. Genetics gives voice to the silent bones. It shows us that conquest rarely means total erasure. Cultures blend, adapt, and endure in ways that written records often miss. The Etruscans were never who we thought they were. They were not exotic migrants from a distant land. They were the sophisticated, innovative children of Italy itself, and their story is still written in the DNA of the people who live there today. Next time you stand in a Tuscan piazza, listening to Italian being spoken, Or when you see the purple stripes on a ceremonial robe in some ancient Roman fresco, remember this: the Etruscans are still here. They never left. They simply became part of something larger.